Okay. Hello. Today we're gonna talk about topic 03, and it's on it. The topic it's on functions. But before we get started, I have some announcements to make. Today a new package got released, and today's package is going to be due on Wednesday. So if you are doing the practice problems, um, send them to me on before Wednesday. Today we're going to be solving the problems from last week, and let's get started with those. So these problems are pretty similar, but I'm just gonna solve only one, and it's going to be this one because I feel this is the hardest one, and the one that a lot of people was going to have more difficulties with. So it's an always running program, right? And because of that, you want to have a while loop and while true. And you are going to be handling some inputs. So I use the word command and input to get an input, and then I wait for some inputs. And I also want to have a message, and that's the menu. So I put menu, and the menu consists of the following. Um, so I have edit, and I have these like that. I have cell, and the option is with S. Then I have print, so edit, and then print. The option is with P, and I also have the option quit, and the option is Q. So before I ask for an input, I first print the message. So print the menu, and then I have to wait for the user to input a command. So in case the command is not one of these, it doesn't specify you message. Okay. If the option given is not in our command or what we expect it to be, let's just print a message. So if the command or yeah, if command, we have three different commands. So if the command is E, um, or we can do it this way: if command in the string E or E, so we can expect it to work for capitalized E or lowercase e. So if the command is E, is going to do something. I'm gonna just do a process statement right now. If the command in S or little s, I put a process statement right now, and then I can just copy and paste this like that. So, and then let me get the S and T, and then the Q. So I have it like that. Else, if it's not in the expected commands, well, we print command not found, not found, or not recognized. I don't know. You can put whatever you want it to put. And then the edit should ask for an ID. Okay, so edit should ask for an ID end time. So we also have a while true. We have a while loop inside a while loop. So the input, it's going to be an integer. And then this is expected to be an ID number. And then we can have a message to be the input message. We want it to be product ID. So we gotta handle exceptions, and this can have an exception, data type exception. So let's just do except. I'm gonna accept for all of them, and then I'm gonna put a break here. So if the exception, any exception will cause this while loop to break. So otherwise, we want to do an else. And then we can, in the except, we can put print something went wrong. Like this. And then we break out of the while loop. Then we can do the else in case something goes right. And then we are going to have a list of we are going to have, you should ask for an ID, which must be positive, name, and price for the user, from the user. If the ID is not in the database, add its information. Otherwise, it updates the new information. Okay, so we are going to have a list of items. So items is going to be a, let it be a dictionary. So it's going to be a dictionary. And then in the else, we are going to look for, so if ID number, ID num in items dot keys. If the ID number is in the item keys, we change it. Otherwise, actually, we don't need to do this because if it is, it will change it. And if it's not in the database, then it will just put it there. So items, items, and then we can do it like this, ID number. And then let's put it in a list where the first input is the name. So products name, product name. And then we put it like this. And then the input of a number. So input integer of a number, price. But remember, whenever you have an input, you expect something to go wrong. So you can put a try except inside here. So try and then accept. And then we can choose copy and paste the same error here. Something went wrong. Okay. And then this is the part for the edit part. So if the ID number is negative, we gotta put it here. If ID number is equal, you can put it like equals -1, but you can also do is less than 0, because if we know it is less than 0, it's a negative number. It's -1 basically. So we can put a break statement right there, and then after these, I wanna check if the command is S, and the command is going to ask the user to input an ID number and a quantity number, and infinitely many times. So we're going to have a while loop again, while 1, which means while true. And let me see. So let me choose that one smaller so we can have more space. The cell option USD and a quantity. Okay. So first we asked the input for we asked for an ID. So ID number is equals to int input product ID number. And then we also want to have a quantity equals to integer input and then quantity um, and then we are expecting something to 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 fail, so we can put these two statements in a try statement, and then accept, and then we can choose break and do with print an error message. Something went wrong, and if something goes wrong, then we can choose break. But remember, we are going to need a list of items, of the person's items, or the items that the person is buying, right? Or maybe not that, but like a text where we can just put all the information we need in a total. And a total is going to be 0. And then in case it goes right, then we do this. But we also want to print the text, and then print the text, and then, well, yeah, text plus the total, and it's a formatted string, and then I can put total here. So yeah, and then yeah, good. And then we have the break exception, and then we can put an else statement here, so we can keep doing some more of the problem, the following part. And we are going to have first we want the text to have like a header here. Text, you put the name first, then you put the quantity. So you put the name, the quant, and then you put the price of a single piece, and then the total, and then you can put that new line right after. So in the else, we're gonna have the text being appended to we need to look for the ID number. So if ID number in the items dot keys. So if the ID number is in the item keys, else I can just put give a message, else print item not found, item not found, and then keep going with the iteration or the while loop. So text, and then we can do items ID number, and then I can append some space, then append, okay, the ID number, and remember the first one is the name, and then the second one is going to be the price, but after the After the name, we need to know the quantity of the item, so we know how many. So a string or str quantity plus the plus some white space, and then we can have the quantity here. This is the price plus, and then we are going to have a subtotal. So subtotal is going to be equals to this, which is the price times quantity. And then here is the white space plus the quantity, no, plus the subtotal. And then after this, we need to add the subtotal to the total. So total plus equals to the subtotal. And this needs to be here. Okay. And that's the command. So when we put the ID being equals to -1, so if the ID is -1, I can put it here. If ID number equals or less than 0, we can choose print the text plus the total. So basically this as the text, and then we can just quit or break, and that's that. We're done with this command. Now, if we need to print it, we can just do for. We can do a for loop. We need text, so a string text equals to an empty text, and then it's not actually empty. We need the ID, some white space, then the name, and then some more white space, and then the price, and that's it. And then a new line. And then we do a for loop. So for item, and then name price in items dot items. Remember, the second items is just a tuple, and then we can have here we can do the text equals to the item ID. So this is going to be a string plus some white space here plus the name. So name price, the first one, plus some more white space here. And then we need the price, so it's name price, so the second one, and then plus the empty line. And I think I forgot to add the empty line here. Yeah, I didn't add it. So plus, and this is actually a string. So a string, so total plus the new line. Okay. And then after that, we need to print it. So print the text. And that's how you can do it, but there are many other ways on how to do these commands. And then if the command is a queue, you can do you can print in the next menu, like bye, and then choose break. Okay, now let's give it a try. And if it runs, let's put edit, and then it asks for an input. Let's put 1212. I don't know, X. and then price 12. And then I can put another product ID. Let's try 1313. Let's put a stick. And then let's put price, I don't know, 15. And then let's just add another product. Let's give it, I don't know, juice. And then price 6. And then let's put -1. Let's try to print it. And there was an error. Yeah, I see why. So there was an error because this should be a string. And remember, that was a number. So we just converted to a string. Let's run it again. And let's edit. So 12, x 10, 13, mistake, price 16, and then 14, juice, price 6, and then -1, and then print, and you have the actual the list here of all the items you sell. You can also go back and edit again. Let's add a product ID 1515, product name candies. I don't know what type of candies, but let's just put candies, and let's put $2 and then -1, and then let's try to sell. So I'm gonna buy product 1212, and I'm gonna buy 5 of those, and there was an error. Can only concatenate a string, not integer. And okay, here we just do a string. I forgot that. And then this is name. Okay, good. Let's try again. Let me just put X again. Price 10, 13, product name mistake. Price 16, product ID 14, juice. I just put it wrong. That's okay. Then -1, and then sell. I want to buy shit. Well, I didn't buy anything. Let me buy again. Sell 12. Quantity. Let me buy 6 of those, and then let me buy 13, and let me buy 5 of those, and then I don't want anything else. You can see here it's actually right formatted, and the math is actually done right. Any questions, or you guys are good? I'm gonna wait for some time, and then I'm gonna check the comments. No questions? Okay. That means we can jump at the functions. So if we take a look at the functions, I'm gonna close this already, and then I'm gonna open the functions here. Okay, let's see the functions. Let's talk about first. Let's talk about some basic functions. As you guys know, and as we talked from last meeting, we said that functions are basically codes of block that can be executed when they are called. So the way you call a function is just first you have to define a function. This is defining a function, declaring a function, or creating a function. You can use any of that of any of those words to describe the creation of a function. We also when you wanna use the function, we use the term call. So when you call the function, you basically put parentheses to call the function. If you have a for example, it's a number, and then you wanna call something on A, this will tell you A is not a callable. It cannot be callable because it's not an integer is not a callable it's not a callable object. And the only objects that are callable are these ones, the functions, and initializers. And we'll see that in later in the course for in week 3. So yeah, so when you want to call a function, you use the parentheses. So that's when you are trying to call a function. Let me define a simple function, and let me show you guys something about simulation, something about default arguments. So let's create a function that adds two numbers together. So we have number A, which is expected to be a number, and then number B, which is expected to be another number. So we return the sum of A plus B. And then if you call summation, and then you print the result, so print the these are called default values for arguments. So if you don't pass anything to this argument, uh, the value will the value that will be used through the function will be the default value you put here. But if you actually put a value there, for example 2 and 3, this value will be ignored, and the value used for the function will be the value given. So the value that you gave will be the value used through the function. But if you don't give any value, if I just call it like this, it won't it will use the default values. So if you run this, let's run it, you see the summation function returns 0 because 0 plus 0 it's 0. And if you just put one value here, for example 3, I'll get 3 because the first argument is it's A. So A it's equals to 3 this time because the value is given and the default value is not used. But the default value of V is still 0. So 3 plus 0 is 3, and that's what you get here. If you do let's say 5, and then you run it, you'll see that the values used in this function are 3 and 5 because the default values are ignored because you actually give them some values in the function. So that's one way of using default values. But what if you wanna keep adding more numbers? For example, 6 and 7 and 8. If you do this, let me try it. It'll give you an error because it'll tell you that the function only receives 2 arguments, and you are actually given more arguments. This time I'm actually giving 5 arguments. So if I wanna get more than 2 arguments, let me just get rid of the first one, and let me put numbers here, and then I can do total equals to the A value, and then I can do a for loop for a number in numbers. This should be called numbers. In numbers, I can keep adding to the total. So total plus equals the number. So if I do this, this should be legal to do. And I get none because I didn't return the total. So I gotta return the total. And if I try it one more time, I get 29. So basically what I'm doing here is getting a default value, which is, not a default value, a necessary value, which is A. And then this number, you gotta put a star there. And then this means that the values, any value after the first required argument will be a list of all those values, and this is basically a list. So if you print the numbers here, you'll see that it's actually a list, or a tuple in this case. Well, never a list, so it was a tuple. And yeah, that's how you know this is actually a list. You can also give them other numbers, but this time, for example, I don't have the argument b here. But if I wanna give the argument b here, and I run it, it will tell me that the argument is not known. But what I'm trying to actually do, it's give more arguments. So, and these are called key arguments. Um, I just I for the use I give them, I just call them card because they are key arguments, and they are basically a dictionary. So if you print it, you'll see that they are a dictionary. Let's print it and let's give more values. 100 and d equals to 20. And let's see, and you'll see here that the cars here, it's a dictionary. So if you get rid of this one and you actually want to use them, so for key number in cards, you do in card store items here. You can add to the total plus equals the number, and then let's see, and it does the math. So yeah, this is one way of using these are called I have it here. I forgot. These are called arbitrary arguments and the key arguments. So yeah, and then the default arguments are the ones you give them a value. So if you need, for example, let me instead of a, let me use b here. Let me use a here, and then here let me use e. So here, what's happening is that a is a required argument. So if I don't give any number here, I just give 3. A is gonna be 3. So let me try. It's 3. But if I don't give any value there, I cannot call the function because a is a required argument. I need to give a value to that argument for the function to work. So yeah, and Zoom is about to kick us out. So let me just stop the meeting, and then let's come back in 5 minutes. So yeah. If you guys have any questions, just formulate the question, and then when we get back to this, we can get to the questions before anything. So let me end the meeting. Record. Okay. Okay. So if you guys don't have any questions on this, then we can get to the other topic that I want to cover today, and it's just recursion. So before we jump to recursion, I'm pretty sure maybe some of you might be familiarized with this concept. In mathematics, we have, for example, this function or this number. And this basically means that n is equals to the previous number of n plus 3. So if I give n the initial value of 0, then n after the first computation, n is going to be 3, and after that computation, n is going to be 6, and so on, right? So this concept seems to be pretty simple in mathematics, but in computer science, we see recursion in a different way. First, we have 3 steps to identify a recursive function, and let me write them here if I can remember them correctly. So I have step number 1. We have to identify the base case, and then number 2, we need to work towards the base case. And then number 3 is make a recursive call. And these are the 3 laws to recursion, I think these are called. I'm not sure how like the actual scientific name that they gave this to these three steps. But the idea is kind of simple. So let's look at factorial. So if you guys know factorial, um, receives a number, and then this number. So let's start from the base case. What's the base case? Base case of factorial. Factorial. So the base case of factorial is when n equals to 0, because factorial of 0 is equals to 1. And since we don't have negative values, factorial of negative values, then 0 is known as the base case in the factorial function. Any other case, for example, when factorial is equals to 1, we know that factorial of 1 is actually 1 times 0 factorial. And since since we know that 0 factorial is 1, then we know that factorial of 1 is 1 times 1. And then if we go back to, for example, n equals 3, we know the factorial of 3 is equals to 3 times factorial of 2, and then factorial of 2, or factorial of 3 is 3 times 2 times factorial of 1, and then factorial of 1 is equals, or this whole thing is equals to 3 times 2 times 1 times factorial of 0. And this can be simplified to 3 times 2 times 1 times 1 again, because factorial of 0 is 1. So this is a recursive function, right? And then, as we said, if the n number is equals to 0, we know the factorial of 0 is 1, so we return 1. Otherwise, if it's any other number, we know that the number that the factorial of that number is equals to the number, so we return the number times the factorial of the other number, of the number minus 1. So if this is true, and if we print the factorial of 3, and then here we can see that it's 3 times 2, that's 6, times 1 times 1, that's still 6. And if we print this factorial, we'll get the answer here, and it's 6. And then you can get the factorial of 100, for example, and then you'll see this this very, very large number. But just trust that this function is doing everything correctly, and thus you'll always get the result that you expected. So with that being said, there are sometimes you fail to identify the base case. So in recursive functions, there are some cases in which you are trying to do a recursive function, but then you don't know what the base case of that function is, and that's a very bad problem, because as we said, one of the laws of the recursive function is to identify the base case. The second mistake that you might do is that you will not work towards the base case. So for example, if I was to do if I forgot to subtract the -1 here, this can create or have some errors, because I'm always going to be trying to go recursively on the same number, and I'm never going to reach the base case. So by putting the -1, I ensure that I'll be reaching that base case. So that base case. So there is a point in which I'm going to have n equals to 1. I mean n equals to 0. Sometimes you might have more than one base case, and in that case you wanna have you wanna handle it correctly. And yeah, um, you might also fail to make a recursive function. So if you forget to make the recursive function, you only return the end. You are also not following the last here. So just try to read these 3 steps and ensures that you are actually doing you are implementing these 3 steps correctly. So let's look at one of the practice problems, and then we can solve maybe one of them. And then here is write a function. Let me just solve one of the recursive functions. So write a function in its implementation, which takes 2 inputs, a list, a basic and a basic operation in a single character string. Return the operation on the element on recursive. So yeah, let me see. I can do the number. So I can do, what's the base case? If we have a list and if the length of the argument is equals to 0, we are done. But let's forget about I forgot to add another argument. So operation, and then if the length of the argument is equals to 1, we return the argument the position 0. So it's only that number. Otherwise, we do the operation here. So there are many ways to do this, but one of them is to identify the operator. So if the operation here is equals to this, then we do multiplication. So just give me a second. We do return of the first number, the argument, position 0 times the operation or the recursively of the least argument from 1 onward, and then the operation here. You do this for all the other operations like this. I'm gonna do multiplication here, and then instead of doing that, I do multiplication right there. And then I do subtraction, and then I can put elif, and then I can do a division here. So if I got a division right there, I can do a division right there. And if I use this example here, and if I wrote that correctly, I can do a print statement of that. And let's figure the, let me just call this one. Okay, let me see, run Python. And then I'm having some problems here. So if the length of that is that, okay, good. And then, yeah, it works. So let's put other numbers like 2, 3, 2, 1, 1, 1. Then let's put an addition here. Yeah, this is one way of doing this example here recursively. So yeah, just have in mind those three cases. Have the base case, have the recursive call, and work towards the recursive function. And some functions are going to be harder to implement. So let me just take a look at the examples here. And I couldn't think of any recursive function myself. So I had to use the information from one of my professors from UCI. and these are pretty useful here. So if we let me see here. Let me copy this function and let me paste it here so we can analyze it better here. We have this function and we have two base cases. One base case, and I forgot to add that here because and put in practice, because we actually, if the length of the argument is equals to 0, then we return 0. Yeah. So why? Because if I input a number here, not like nothing here, and if I call this function, I should get 0 because nothing happened. Okay, if that makes sense. And yeah. So if we go back to here, and then this function looks for a number or a value to be inside a list or a tuple or something iterable. So if the list or whatever the iterable object we get is empty, then we return false because the object is not in there. But if the length is equals to 0, we return that the first element of the list is equals to the value. So here, if the first element is equals to the value, then we know that it's true, and then we return it. Otherwise, we look whether the sub list of the whole list is actually containing that value. So this is one way of doing this. Any questions? No. Yeah, I just have that in mind, and I think we are gonna end the meeting a little early today. Just make sure this concept of recursion, it's very important, because if you are interested in computer science, you might be looking at, this is the kind of things you'll be dealing with more likely. Identify algorithms that can do things recursively, or some ways on doing some things recursively, and it's basically you trying to develop this kind of ways of solving problems. So yeah, if you guys don't have any questions, we can go ahead and finish a little early today. Just keep working on these problems, keep sending them to me, and I'll be reviewing them. And yeah, have a nice Monday, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Bye.